Dillon Brooks showed up to watch LeBron fall. Dillon Brooks didn't need a jersey, a defensive assignment, or even 1 second on the floor to get under LeBron James' skin again. All he needed was a courtside seat. Years after Brooks declared that he liked to poke bears, one of the NBA's most persistent rivalries suddenly came roaring back in the most unexpected place, with Brooks sitting near the action, watching LeBron and the Lakers fight to keep their postseason alive. According to the story, Brooks appeared courtside during a crucial Lakers playoff game with Los Angeles facing elimination pressure. But his presence alone wasn't what made the moment explode online. The real twist was how he reportedly got there. The tickets came through Rich Paul, LeBron's longtime friend and agent. That detail immediately created questions. Was it simply a ticket between people who have known each other around the league? Was Brooks just there to watch playoff basketball? Or was this an incredible coincidence that placed one of LeBron's loudest rivals only feet away while the Lakers were under maximum pressure? Whatever the explanation, the cameras could not have asked for a better moment. At one point, LeBron became involved in an exchange with a fan near the court. Brooks watched from his seat. Then came the image everyone would remember. Brooks smiling and laughing as the tension unfolded. Suddenly, the man who had spent years challenging LeBron was back in the story without saying a word. And that is what makes Dillon Brooks different from so many players who have tried to provoke James. He doesn't seem interested in allowing the rivalry to disappear. Memphis, Houston, Phoenix, it hasn't mattered. Different uniform, same target. But here's the part. People forget this rivalry did not begin with Brooks laughing from a courtside seat. It began years earlier, when a fearless Memphis team believed LeBron was finally vulnerable, and Brooks decided to say publicly what almost nobody else wanted to say. That decision would follow him for years. So tell us where you're watching from. If you think Brooks' courtside appearance was hilarious psychological warfare, come on. All right. If you think he should let the LeBron rivalry go, come on, dude. Subscribe to the channel, because next we're breaking down the courtside moment that went viral and why one laugh brought the entire Poke the Bear story back to life. The courtside laugh that went viral, the image that turned this rivalry back into a national conversation, did not come from a hard foul, a technical or post-game quote. It came from Dillon Brooks sitting in a courtside seat and laughing. That was all it took. According to the story, LeBron was already dealing with enormous pressure. The Lakers were facing elimination. The atmosphere was tense, and every possession carried the weight of a season potentially ending. Then LeBron became involved in a back and forth with a fan near the floor. Brooks saw it, and he started laughing. For anyone else in the arena, that reaction might have meant nothing. But this was Dillon Brooks, the same player who had spent years trying to provoke LeBron, challenge him publicly, and turn every matchup into a psychological contest. The cameras caught exactly the wrong or perfect moment. Brooks was sitting there looking amused while LeBron was visibly engaged with something outside the action. The internet immediately connected the dots. Screenshots spread, clips circulated, old quotes returned. The Poke the Bear storyline was alive again. Then came the Rich Paul detail. Brooks later explained that he had reached out for tickets and ended up with a courtside seat through Paul. That alone created enough irony to keep the story moving. Rich Paul is deeply connected to LeBron personally and professionally, so fans naturally began wondering whether the seat placement was intentional, but there was no need to exaggerate. The situation was already dramatic enough. Brooks did not need to plan anything. He did not need to confront LeBron. He did not even need to speak. The visual told the story for him. That is what made the moment so effective. For years, Brooks had tried to make LeBron react when they shared the floor. Now he was doing it from the stands. And the strangest part was that this entire rivalry had started because Brooks once believed LeBron was finally vulnerable. To understand why the laugh carried so much weight, you have to go back to Memphis. It all started in Memphis, before the courtside memes, before the ejections, before the Instagram shots. Dillon Brooks was simply a fearless defender on a young Memphis Grizzlies team that believed it was ready to take over the Western Conference. That confidence mattered. Memphis entered the 2023 playoffs as a high seed with youth, energy, and an edge. Ja Morant gave them star power. The roster had physicality, and Brooks gave them something else. A player who was completely comfortable becoming the villain. Then the Lakers appeared. Los Angeles entered the matchup with LeBron James, still carrying the gravity that had followed him for nearly 2 decades. Most players treated LeBron with a certain level of caution. Even when they competed hard against him, Brooks did the opposite. He talked before the series. He made it clear that he welcomed the matchup. He spoke about the opportunity to eliminate one of the greatest players ever in the first round. That was the first sign. This was never going to remain a normal playoff series. Brooks' approach was psychological. He did not want LeBron simply thinking about defensive schemes and matchups. He wanted LeBron thinking about him. That is an important distinction. If Brooks could make the biggest player in the building respond emotionally, then in his mind, he had already changed the game. The strategy fit everything about his personality. He had already built a reputation for technical fouls, physical defense, verbal exchanges, and an almost stubborn refusal to back down from anyone. And LeBron represented the ultimate target, not because Brooks believed he had the same resume, but because challenging LeBron gave him the biggest stage possible. That is why the rivalry became so compelling so quickly. Brooks was not just guarding a superstar. He was publicly rejecting the idea that he should be intimidated by one, and then Game 2 gave him exactly what he wanted: a Memphis win, a microphone, and a chance to make the entire series personal. He took it. Pokey Bears changed everything. After Memphis won Game 2, Dillon Brooks did not walk into the locker room sounding relieved. He sounded like someone who wanted more attention. He called LeBron old, then he delivered the line that would define the rivalry: "I poke bears." The statement was perfectly designed to spread because it was simple, aggressive, and disrespectful enough to create immediate tension without requiring a long explanation. Brooks went even further, saying he did not respect anyone until they gave him 40. That was the moment everything changed. Before that, quote, Brooks was a tough defender talking confidently during a playoff series. After it, he became the antagonist: the sunglasses, the confidence, the posture, the delivery. Everything about the moment made it feel like Brooks was announcing that he wanted the pressure, and strategically, that is exactly what he was doing. Trash talk at that level is not only about insulting someone, it is about creating an emotional obligation by calling LeBron old and questioning whether he deserved respect. Brooks was trying to make LeBron feel like he had something to prove personally. If LeBron started hunting Brooks instead of simply running the offense, then Brooks had potentially changed the terms of the series. That is psychological warfare, but it is also dangerous, because when you challenge a player with LeBron's history, you are gambling that he cannot still punish you for it. Brooks accepted that risk willingly. He wanted the matchup, he wanted the cameras, he wanted the crowd to hate him. And for a brief moment, it looked like the strategy might work. The entire league was talking about him. The Lakers fan base was furious. LeBron had been publicly challenged, but there was one problem. Brooks could not control. LeBron refused to fight the battle on Brooks' terms. He did not answer with a quote. He did not promise 40. He did not insult Brooks back. He simply waited for the next game, and that silence was about to become much louder than anything Brooks had said. LeBron refused to play the trash talk game. LeBron James has spent most of his career dealing with players who want a reaction. Some want a headline, some want proof that they can get under his skin, some want a moment they can carry with them forever. Brooks wanted all three, but after the poke the bear comments, LeBron did something strategically smart. He gave Brooks almost nothing. When reporters tried to turn the matchup into a war of words, LeBron cut the conversation short. He said he was ready to play and moved on. That response mattered because it denied Brooks the thing he wanted most: verbal validation. Brooks' style depends on interaction. He talks, he pushes, he waits for the other player to engage. Once the opponent reacts, Brooks can tell himself the strategy is working. LeBron refused to give him that satisfaction publicly. Instead, he shifted the argument back to basketball. This is where the contrast between the two players became clear. Brooks wanted confrontation before the result. LeBron preferred the result first. That does not mean LeBron was completely unaffected. The intensity on the floor showed that both players understood exactly what was happening, but LeBron did not let Brooks control the public story. That was important. When a younger player calls a legend old, the temptation is to respond immediately. LeBron did not need to. His career had already answered most questions Brooks was trying to ask. The only thing left was the series itself, and once the matchup shifted back to Los Angeles, the atmosphere changed completely. Every Brooks touch drew boos. Every possession felt personal. Every Lakers fan in the building wanted LeBron to punish the player who had just challenged him publicly. Then, seconds into the second half of Game 3, the rivalry exploded physically. Brooks reached in, LeBron went down. The officials reviewed the play, and suddenly Brooks was no longer the man controlling the narrative. He was walking off the floor. The series turned into Brooks' nightmare. Game 3 became the moment when Dillon Brooks' villain persona stopped being entertaining and started becoming costly. Early in the second half, Brooks made contact with LeBron in a sensitive area while reaching defensively. LeBron went down. Officials reviewed the play, and Brooks was ejected. He later maintained that the contact was not intentional, but in that moment, intention barely mattered to the atmosphere inside the arena. The crowd erupted. Brooks had spent days building himself into the villain, and now Los Angeles treated him exactly like one. That ejection became another chapter in a series that was beginning to move away from Memphis, and the larger problem for Brooks was that LeBron kept responding where it mattered. On the court, in Game 4, LeBron delivered a 0.20 rebound performance, a remarkable showing for a player. Brooks had publicly called old. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Brooks had tried to frame LeBron as a fading superstar. LeBron responded by producing a performance tied to longevity and historical greatness. No argument needed. No press conference confrontation required. Just production. The Lakers kept gaining control, and Memphis could not stop the momentum by Game 6. The series ended brutally. Los Angeles won by 40. That number immediately became part of the story because Brooks had previously said he would not respect anyone until they gave him 40. LeBron himself did not score 40. But the scoreboard delivered the kind of irony sports fans never forget. The Lakers had won by 40, and Brooks left before speaking to reporters. That silence became part of the story too. The man who had been loudest when the series was tied suddenly had nothing useful to say once it was over. For LeBron, the victory created the perfect opportunity to respond, and this time, with the basketball finished, he finally did. He posted a Bear-themed message online that everyone understood immediately. The player Brooks said he wanted to poke had survived, and now the rivalry had its first complete chapter. Brooks talked first. LeBron won, and the internet remembered every word. The Bear struck back. LeBron's response after the Memphis series worked because of the timing. He waited. That was the key. If LeBron had immediately attacked Brooks after being called old, the story would have become an argument between two players. Instead, LeBron allowed the games to happen first. Then, after the Lakers had eliminated Memphis, he posted a message referencing the idea of fighting a bear. The meaning was obvious. Brooks had spent the series telling everyone he poked bears. LeBron's message flipped that image back on him. That was the psychological victory, not because the Instagram caption itself was devastating, but because it came after the result had already removed most of Brooks' leverage. There was nothing left for Brooks to say. The Lakers had won. LeBron had delivered major moments. Memphis was eliminated, and the player who had talked the most had become the punchline. That is why the post spread so quickly. It did not create the story, it closed the chapter, but the surprising part is that Brooks never allowed the rivalry to die. A lot of players would have adjusted after that kind of public defeat. They might have talked less. They might have avoided giving LeBron extra motivation. Brooks did the opposite. He kept the same persona. When he left Memphis and joined Houston, the tension followed him. When he later moved to Phoenix, it followed again. Every time he saw LeBron, there was a sense that unfinished business still existed. That persistence is one of the most interesting things about Brooks. Losing did not embarrass him into silence. Being ejected did not make him more cautious. Becoming a meme did not change his approach. He kept competing physically. He kept talking. He kept trying to make LeBron react. And sometimes, he actually succeeded. That is what prevented the rivalry from becoming a one-series story. It evolved. Different cities, different jerseys, same two personalities. And by the time Brooks reached Phoenix, the rivalry had become almost independent of team context. It was no longer Lakers versus Grizzlies. It was Dillon Brooks versus LeBron James. Brooks took the rivalry everywhere. Most NBA rivalries weaken when players change teams. This one did the opposite. Brooks left Memphis, but the tension with LeBron traveled with him in Houston. Every Lakers matchup still carried extra energy. Brooks defended physically, talked throughout possession, and continued treating LeBron as the one superstar he most wanted to challenge. Then the story moved again. Phoenix, different uniform, sans confrontation. According to the source, one of the later matchups included multiple heated exchanges, physical defense, technical fouls, and Brooks eventually being removed after the intensity boiled over. That kind of sequence only strengthened the perception that the rivalry had become personal, but Brooks also had nights where his approach produced real basketball results. One performance against the Lakers saw him score 33 points while embracing every reaction from the crowd, celebrating aggressively, and even using gestures associated with LeBron. Those moments matter because they explain why Brooks refuses to stop. If the strategy only produced embarrassment, Eventually, even someone as stubborn as Brooks might abandon it. But sometimes it works. Sometimes he scores. Sometimes he wins. Sometimes he gets the exact reaction he was looking for. That keeps the cycle alive. Brooks understands something about modern sports culture. Attention magnifies everything. A strong game against an ordinary opponent is news for a night. A strong game against LeBron, filled with trash talk and tension, lives online for days. That does not mean his entire persona is fake. The competitive edge appears genuine. But Brooks clearly understands the value of the stage. Going after LeBron guarantees one, and LeBron understands the dynamic too. That is why he often refuses to feed it publicly. He knows every verbal exchange gives Brooks exactly what he wants. But the rivalry has become too established to disappear completely. Even when they do not speak, the body language matter. The matchups matter. The crowd watches differently. The cameras know where to look. And by 2026, Brooks did not even need to be playing to become part of LeBron's playoff story. All he had to do was sit courtside and laugh, which raises the most interesting question of the entire rivalry. Who actually needs this more? Why Brooks needs this rivalry more than LeBron? The biggest imbalance in the Dillon Brooks-LeBron James rivalry has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with stakes. LeBron does not need Dillon Brooks. His legacy was established long before the rivalry began. Championships, MVPs, records, finals appearances, decades of relevance. None of that changes because Brooks talks trash or laughs from courtside. For Brooks, the equation is different every time he challenges LeBron. The spotlight gets brighter. That does not mean Brooks is only chasing attention. He is a legitimate NBA defender with a real role, and his willingness to guard elite players is part of what gives him value. But attention is still part of the dynamic. Challenging LeBron transforms a normal matchup into a headline. Talking to LeBron turns a regular possession into a clip. Making LeBron react creates a moment that gets replayed everywhere. In a league where visibility matters, Brooks has found one of the most powerful shortcuts available: challenge the biggest name in the building. That is why his approach works even when he loses. If Brooks gets ejected, people talk about him. If LeBron beats him, people talk about him. If Brooks scores 30 and talks all night, people talk about him. Even when he sits courtside, people talk about him. From a psychological perspective, Brooks is playing two games at once. There is the basketball game, and there is the attention game. LeBron, by contrast, has almost nothing to gain from the second one. That is why silence is often his best weapon. If he ignores Brooks, the rivalry loses oxygen. If he responds after winning, he controls the timing. If he answers during the game through execution, Brooks is forced to deal with the scoreboard instead of the headline. That contrast is what has kept the rivalry alive. Brooks keeps knocking on the door. LeBron keeps deciding when or whether to answer, and that is why the courtside scene in 2026 mattered so much. It showed that Brooks no longer needed to share the floor with LeBron to enter the story. Years after Memphis, years after Poke the Bear, years after the 4-0-point clincher, the same rivalry could still restart with one camera shot. That is not normal. That is what happens when competition becomes history. What this rivalry really says about the NBA. The Dillon Brooks LeBron James rivalry has lasted this long because it is about more than trash talk. It represents two completely different ways of competing. Brooks believes confrontation creates energy. He challenges stars directly, embraces boos, invitation, and seems to enjoy the psychological battle almost as much as the basketball itself. For him, attacking the biggest name on the floor is not something to avoid. It is the point. LeBron operates differently. He has spent years learning that responding to every provocation only gives the other person more power. That is why his strongest answers to Brooks have usually come after the talking stops, a playoff win, a major performance, a late free throw, a perfectly timed social media post after the scoreboard has already settled the argument. Strategically, there is something younger players can learn from both sides. Brooks shows the value of confidence. He refuses to enter a matchup already defeated mentally because of another player's reputation. That fearlessness can be valuable in professional sport, but confidence has to remain connected to discipline. Once trash talk becomes more important than execution, it stops being an advantage. Technical fouls, ejections, unnecessary confrontations, and emotional mistakes can hurt the same team. A player is trying to inspire. LeBron's approach offers the opposite lesson. Not every challenge deserves an immediate response. Sometimes the strongest answer is preparation, patience, and letting your performance speak first. And there is a human lesson here as well. Competition can be intense without becoming hatred. Players can challenge each other, disagree, and play physically while still understanding that basketball is ultimately competition, not personal destruction. Rivalries are at their best when they create better performances, not when they cross into unnecessary hostility. That is what makes Brooks versus LeBron so fascinating. One player constantly tries to create the confrontation, the other keeps deciding when the confrontation is worth acknowledging. From Memphis in 2023 to Houston, Phoenix, ejection, viral moments, poke the bear, and finally that unforgettable courtside laugh. Every chapter has added another layer. Now it is your turn. If you respect Brooks for refusing to be intimidated by one of the greatest players ever, come on. If you think he has crossed the line too many times and LeBron has handled the rivalry better, come on, dude. Like the video, share it with another NBA fan, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you are watching from, because the next time these two enter the same building, everybody will already know exactly what history is walking in with them.